G'day YouTubers and welcome to Nuclearies. Once again, the chemical update dropped yesterday. Today I want to show you and explain everything you need to know and more, including a car analogy on how this facility works in general. So, righty then, let's get into the car analogy very quickly before getting into very deep diving on how this all works and how I'm kind of expecting this game to play out in future updates, possibly. So, let's turn this all on as I'm explaining it in the car analogy. So your fuel is obviously your petrol or your diesel, your hydrogen, whatever you want to call it. That's what that is. Your pressurizer is your supercharger. Your reactor core is your engine block. The control rods themselves are the gear shifter. Coming on over to the primary coolant system, this would be your crankshaft. That goes over to the steam generator or your drive shaft that then takes all that power from the engine over to the tires or wheels, aka your turbine, alright? Once all that's been used up and all that energy needs to go somewhere and cool down, comes over to the condenser, aka your radiator, alright? That's the last step, and that's where all that temperature ends up going in the end. It's those massive cooling towers you see out the front of those nuke facilities. In with the car analogy onto the new chemical update as well. So you got your boric acid. That's pretty much like the oil or the lube of the system, alright? Just helps with smooth operations and to make sure that the fuel doesn't get out of hand, alright? Now, the exhaust pipe. What's that? And that's where it gets deep diving into. So get your thinking caps on. There's going to be a few things that you need to know on how this all works, alright? So, your fuel usually consists of uranium-238 and uranium-235, which is the good stuff. That's the stuff that's going to give off all those protons, electrons, neutrons, bounce into each other, create all that energy, and all that energy is going to be dumped into that primary coolant system that's surrounding your steam generator, alright? So all that temperature being created from the fuel is going to be bouncing around in the water of that coolant system, alright? And while all that's happening and you're bringing up that temperature, the reactivity's going on, all that good jazz, you're creating waste products like iodine-135 with a 6.3% chance, and that's okay because it is radioactive, but eventually its half-life, half of it, after 6.6 hours of its creation, will eventually turn into Xenon-135. So while that iodine is being created, Xenon with a 0.3% chance is also being created at the same time. And all that Xenon is going to have to go somewhere because Xenon-135 is a reactor poison, alright? It's a neutron poison, so think of it kind of like a big paper towel soaking up all that energy producing fuel that you'd rather be dumping into your system to create power. So you don't want that Xenon-135 at all. So how do you get rid of it? You're raising the temperature up, you want to get more power out of the thing, you're creating more and more xenon, more and more iodine, all that sorts of stuff. You're eventually over-poisoning your reactor like they did in Chernobyl, and it's not going to go anywhere. Your temperature's going to drop all the way down because you've just poisoned your reactor because there's too much xenon. So, Sharpie, how do you get rid of it? Well, in normal operation, as long as your reactor is operational and it is giving off all those electrons, neutrons, protons, it's also going to be bumping into the present Xenon-135. And when that uranium bumps into the Xenon-135, it breaks it down into Xenon-136, which eventually just kind of breaks down in the reactor and it can just chill there. That's perfectly fine. There are other sorts of wastes, but they haven't been put into this game and we don't need to worry about that just yet. Alright, so how do you get this all operational and what do you all mean by all this sorts of stuff? So, when you actually shut down, you're no longer producing any reactivity, so that's not able to bounce into that xenon to get rid of it and change it into that 136 type. So, Okay, what happens then? Your xenon poison spikes as soon as you start shutting down, and that's where Chernobyl went wrong. They were in a shutdown mode. They pulled out all of their control rods to get the reaction up and running as fast as possible. The reaction eventually killed all of that xenon poison. The temperature, the reactivity, all that sorts of stuff spiked, and you know exactly where that went from there. So we don't want to do that today. We want to get a normal kind of operation. So let's go ahead and turn our supercharger on, aka the pressurizer, which is going to pressurize some of the coolant system on the internal vessel above 150 bars, so the water inside the reactor core surrounding the fuel doesn't turn into steam. We don't want steam because uranium-235 loves creating more energy than it usually does in those steam bubbles. All right, so that's not a good thing. We don't want steam, all right? Now, what else do we need to do? You need to get some boric acid into that internal loop. So how to do that? You need to do this up to the max, and the normal operational limit is around about 3%-ish of the total liquid volume of your reactor. It always depends on the design, all that sorts of stuff. And the boric acid is usually a diluted solution in itself. So the boric acid as an acid in itself, obviously, with a pH of between 0 to 6, boric acid in its current state in this game, I'm thinking would be around about 3.45 pH in itself. You need something to counteract that, and the best thing to do is this sodium hydroxide, aka those breaks. So when those two gets mixed together, it produces pretty much sodium borate, sodium metaborate, aka borax or salt in other words kind of thing, which is around about 7 or ish pH level in itself, and it is rather quite neutral. So anything between 8 and 14 is an alkaline base. So what's the difference between an acid and a alkaline base? All right, so the boric acid is an actual acid, and it's not going to burn you that much. It is, on the other hand, quite poisonous in large quantities, all right? On the other hand, sodium hydroxide has to be on the other side of that pH, and it's going to be around about 13 or 14, which is a rather alkaline based, and it's another word for sodium hydroxide, and it's really like base form is lye or lime. So pretty much it's like pure bad for organic matter like you or me, and it will dissolve you. It dissolves body in its pure form. It's not good stuff, all right? So what does the pH have to do with everything like that? That's when this comes in. The coolant pH has to do with the water on the inside of the core vessel itself. So as I come over here, just want to check the pressurizer so I don't kind of forget about that one, and I'll continue. There we go, just nice and easy. The pH in the internal vessel needs to be around 7.9 or 8 to make sure that boric acid doesn't cause any problems to the inner wall of that internal vessel of the reactor core, aka our engine block, all right? It's not a good thing, so that's why we always have to have a counteraction to any acid and vice versa. The water, on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that water reserve is meant to refill the tower for the ion exchanger, aka your boron filter pump right here. So all that works is that it filters out all that boron or the borax from mixing those two together. And when you're draining out your core, that may drain out as well at the same time. And you may need to use that water reserve to fill it back up again. Because if you don't know already, mixing sodium hydroxide and water is an endothermic reaction, and it is not good. It will actually create and generate a lot of heat when those two are mixed. So obviously your internal vessel has already got water in it, so dumping this and this is still going to create heat overall because of this and that, pretty much. So getting on to the actual normal operations, let's get this thing going. Let's get that one on, let's get that one on, and let's get our condenser load pump on so we can get our vacuum pulled, get this radiator, aka the condenser, a lot more effective at getting rid of all that heat in those concrete towers out the front. We'll get that condenser pump load on so this can go up to the green at least. The higher this is, the pretty much better effectiveness your temperature will be overall. Because even if this is at like 40,000 liters, it's still going to work perfectly fine. You're still okay with that. Just a little hint. Pressurizer is all good. That's all good. We are raising the boric acid up. I would probably start raising the temperature right about now, but obviously with that boric acid being dumped in there, it is also going to act as a secondary control rod. So it's not like it was before. You're going to have to yank them out a lot further than you normally would. So I'm going to start at 90 just for now, and we'll see how that goes. So from there, I need to get the fuel, aka the uranium, in the internal vessel by doing that. And I'm going to do my normal style and shut that panel down because I don't need it and I don't want to look at all those lights anymore. Alright, cool. Raising up our temperature, which will not happen unless you start putting boric acid in the core. This just won't raise at all. I'm pretty sure this gauge right here is broken in its current state at the end of January when this was recorded. So low input, low coolant flow, that's alright. Let's get that on sorted out. I forgot to get that primary coolant going, that's alright. That's fine, let's acknowledge that. That'll kick on now. It wasn't very hot anyway, so that's good. We'll get our pressurizer just a little bit higher and get it on medium. There we go. Let's go and run over here and get our vacuum pump off because we don't need it anymore, and get this on. Nice and easy. Run on back here. The pressurizer is still coming up slowly. Yep. That's a good thing. Let's get our secondary coolant ready and waiting for when we want to turn it on, but not just yet. Let's get this one down to 10% because this is really rather effective nowadays. And let's turn that condenser load pump off. Awesome. Alright. Our pressurizer's back up again. Let's get that one off. And eventually we will start producing power. So let's go ahead and request to start operations right now. Doesn't take too long, as before the update took about less than half an hour in-game time to get power out to the grid nice and stably to what they were demanding. Now, I'd rather suggest you probably wait for this to raise up just a little bit before increasing the temperature, because that's going to be like a fine-tuning on your reactivity to increase this temperature. So just keep an eye on it and just watch it all out and have a bit of fun, have some testing like I've been doing. It's been absolutely great fun, and we will be getting into that door very shortly. Yes, I know, we're off the electrical grid. That little alarm there says we are generating power. So, let's go ahead, and I'm going to turn this on real quick because I almost forgot to do it. As soon as this gets above 100 degrees, you need to start turning this pump on because that's going to start lowering like it is now. So we'll start raising that up nice and quick. That should be okay, and eventually it should come over here and just get burnt off in the condenser. That's alright just there, that's fine. Increasing the temperature. We are increasing the voltage as well as the RPM in our turbine, which is needed to pretty much spin a big metal rod surrounded by magnets that's going to generate that electricity and output it to the grid and all that sorts of jazz. Yes, I know, it's low, it's fine. It will go up soon. There we go. It's going back up. By alarm, thank you very much. Alright, so what do we got? We've got that received, that's no problem. Go H and T, that's good. So I'm going to press T, make sure that stop on new alarm is off, while I start slowing the reactor core down just a little bit. That should be good just there. Yep, so when this light here is red, it means your control rods are moving. So when it's green, they've moved into their set position. That's how that works. We are producing power. We are dropping a bit in power. That's okay. 82, 86, that's all right. This will probably drop to 0 just because it was a little bit late for me to turn that on, as I'm kind of explaining everything I possibly can, and I hope you followed along with everything so far. So just getting everything operational as we normally would. That's finally stopped at about 23,500. That's really nice. 2017, 21, 24, 26. Good. That's all right. We should now start increasing the generated power overall now quite stably. That's rather nice. See, now it's starting to drop. We need to fight it. So let's bump this up to 45 and let's start fighting this to make sure that needle tries to stay in the green as much as possible and not goes down as, especially as far as what it did before. So I wouldn't suggest doing that. Coming on over here. We're almost at the 3, and as I said, the dev was nice enough to leave some of this core vessel liquid out, just so we are able to put some of this in, because once it gets to 3, this will stop putting 50 in. Like, this will, like, kind of fluctuate between 1 GM and, like, 3 or 4 GMs over the course of time, because boric acid actually dissolves in water. Alright, so just remember that, and it'll eventually just chill in your core as is, and you won't need to add too much more once this gets up to the green range, alright? The way you need to get rid of it is through this boron filter pump. Once you've all shut down, I need to do some more testing on that. If you know what it is for, especially that ion exchange capacity, I'd love to know more information on it, because the research I've done so far still hasn't quite covered as much as I can find, or what's limitedly available online to look. So yeah, please give us a hand out with that. And Stonehammers, Discord, big shout out to you. I know you're watching. Cheers for the other day, or whenever it was this recording was released. Yeah, it is what it is. So we've got 322. Now, this reactivity gauge, you see it's at 10.58 and it's dropping. All right. No, it's kind of raising, it's fluctuating a little bit. Either way, so if this value is at 10.00, your temperature will not go up, nor will it go down. All right? It's very stable when this is at 10.00. If it's at 10.01, your temperature will go up, even ever so slightly. Where if this is at 9.99, your temperature will go down at the same sort of rate as vice versa. So keep that in mind. That's how that works, and that's how that little reactivity gauge works on if you're going to go up, if you're going to go down, or whatever it may be. So I kind of want a little bit more temperature out of that one. Up to 360 would be rather nice. We passed 11 o'clock just yet? No, not quite. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to speed up the time just a little bit, and we are at that. So as I said, it's gone to 0. So I might as well set this to nothing, for the fact that that's fine as is. I can top this up if it gets a little bit too low, and these are both the same gauges, except this goes up by 10 GMs. This goes up by 600, alright? So just keep that in mind. Oh, that was my resistor. That's alright. Okay, yeah, that's not a good thing. That's alright. To stop that from happening and to control your generator, because I really don't want to do this episode again, to control how much generation you're producing, just turn this up. So I'm going to turn this up to 30, and you can watch it drop down before I fix this. So as you can see, it starts dropping down. Make sure this doesn't go above like 60 degrees, because otherwise exactly that will happen. It will blow up. This has finally generated 22,000. Out of the 22,000 we just got at 11 o'clock, we can now finally output to the grid. So the way it works is you need to get this little red moving dot all the way up the top and get it matching into the green, like so. Once that's done, close the breaker. You're now outputting power to the grid, nice and easy. Once that's happening, just go ahead and drop this all the way down, just like so. And yeah, make sure you don't do what I just did and blow up your resistors. Make sure you get this below whatever this says once you've turned all your available ones on. So one resistor when you first start has an absorption capacity of 5,000. Any more than that and this will happen what I just did then. So make sure you don't do that. Let's go down to the bottom very quickly, and I'm going to check out that ion exchange, how I think it all kind of works very quickly. Here we go. So here's your ion exchange. You can turn the inlet, or so you can close the inlet and the outlet valve off and all that sorts of stuff. There's the ion exchange, and here's all your sodium hydroxide water and your boric acid. This is such a brilliant, this texture on this pump, absolutely aces. Looks so good. I'll turn it on briefly since I can, just so you can see it. Yeah, it looks so good. It looks so good. So we'll just turn that back off again. There we go. Yeah, as always, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good jazz, and stay sharp till next time as always. See ya.